Okay, there we go. Oh, Mike was showing me nothing there for a second, but we seem to be all good now. Hey guys, what's going on? Gonna jump in and do a little session prep. I realized that I need to start doing my prep for my session on Friday, and I figured, well, might as well do it. It's not gonna be super involved because we are still right in the middle of adventure, but I figured this would be a good time for those people who are always curious as to how different dungeon masters prep. I think it's super useful to look at how other people do things to see things that may or may not work for you. So I think do that, and I'll show you some things that I'm doing. Even though, like I said, not a standard session. Well, they're in the middle of an adventure, so or like a dungeon. So the individual session prep's not that important because I have all these notes right here, just for the actual adventure they're in the middle of. But we can take a look at some of the stuff that I have done as far as session prep in the past, so you can get an idea as to things that are going on when they're not right in the middle of a adventure. They are coming to the climax of it, actually. They've just about seen every encounter or scene that was probably going to show up in this little adventure location on the mountainside, as they are looking for a hermit, but are having difficulty finding him. He's around here somewhere. Not sure where he is, though. I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and throw it over. Take a look at the prep document. So yeah, obviously, if you guys have questions, feel free, jump in, shoot them out, etc., etc. We're gonna do it, and we'll just go ahead and get started. So, throw you guys over. There we go. All right. So I do my session prep, at least for right now, in Google Docs. Especially now that they have this nice document tab feature over here on the side. Makes it very, very easy to organize it. This is the NPCs table. I'm not very good, haven't been great at keeping up with this, but I'm trying to do it. We have some of our NPCs that show up again, as well as some photos that are just kind of for reference for me. And think about, what do these people look like again? That's helpful for me. Is there another line there? Nope, there's not. Okay, no problem. So let's look at our session prep timers. Go down. So we are prepping for session 28. So if we can take a look at session 27. It's been, at time of recording, a little over a month. Close to basically, and getting towards about a month and a half since we played last. And that's numerous reasons. Number one, end of the year. Holidays, people traveling, and we have other sorts of things going on. We've had some poor weather and things like that that have kind of keep things well. In addition to that, we've also got the other dungeon master in our group, and who I would say is probably, I guess at this point, still the primary dungeon master of our group, of this group that I'm playing in running for. Got bit by the DM bug and has wanted to jump back into the DM seat after, it's been a while. I mean, our first session was when? Yeah, so we're gonna, 10 months ago. So they're feeling a little recharged from that because they haven't been running for most of this time. Then, here in the last few weeks, they've been like, oh, well, I want to run. So we're kind of doing a switch on and off thing as far as the campaigns go. Now, I will be honest, I haven't had a lot of success doing that in the past. Trying to switch in and out of different campaigns. I haven't had an instance in which it's worked very well. Doesn't mean that it can't work very well. It just means that I haven't experienced it working very well. Usually it falls apart. Or essentially people start to get the campaigns confused, or the group will definitely prefer one campaign over the other. Tends to be that whatever is the new thing, the new shiny, tends to be the way that group goes, unless whatever you start running is really, really bad, which is not the case. Our other dungeon master in the group is quite proficient. They can run games just fine. So there is a chance that my campaign, because of that, might end up taking the backseat, which is whatever. This was kind of a filling campaign anyways, because they were feeling a little burned out. So they wanted to play, so I jumped in and run. But let's do our actual things. All right, so we have that's gonna be Friday, so 1:30. It's gonna be our session 28th. Spring Mother 13. That's the calendar date in year. That's a bit important because they've already come across one major holiday within the world, and we need to know who's in the party, who's gonna be there. This is not everybody's gonna be here because I just found out. Player who plays Swain in this campaign will not be able to make it on Friday. So Swain will be out, so it's just going to be the three. It's going to be Ash, our druid, Caleb, our cleric, and Zarnok, our fighter. We've got folk down here. I have a calendar. This is part of the calendar as well, so it tells me what are the average villagers, commoner people doing in the world at any time of year. So this is the time of the year where they're birthing piglets. Just in case I need to throw some flavor in, we already had one interaction that our druid had with a Sal that was having a breech birth piglet and stepped in to help a few sessions back. And then we've got the weather. And these are just things that I usually do is I want to know who's going to be there. That way when I look back at my notes, I can figure out who wasn't there and who was. What's the common people doing? What's the time of year it is? Both when did I run this session, the real date, and then when did it happen in the world, if I ever need to figure out when things are going when and where. This is helpful for that. Helpful for me to know, what is the common folk doing? In case they run into a random village or something, I kind of give them a rundown as to what people are doing and things like that. In the middle of sort of birthing and raising baby piglets that are kind of coming out. So that's where they're at. And then I like to have the weather so I can kind of give them a vibe about how things are going. Now, our campaign right now is taking place in a very tropical area. So everything's just kind of warm and humid and muggy and rainy. Now, it is technically pretty kind of mid-spring right now. It's just after the equinox. So things are starting to warm up, but right now things are relatively pleasant if damp. So we started off warm and gusty, with cloudy and foggy because they were on the side of a mountain, and that's now going to push through to warm and calm, and then light rain's going to start to fall. Next up on this list, I have point of order or foreshadowing, things that I want to make sure that I touch on basically right at the session start, or things that I want to make sure definitely get included in the session. So this is usually I'll write down something like this, where it's hey, here's an idea about what's going on in the weather. We can actually zoom this in a little bit for you guys. Zoom in a little bit and be hey, what's actually going on with the weather and stuff like that. And I'll give myself a little flavor text, as the fog breaks, the wind's calm. Change that. Yeah, the wind calms. Yeah, we'll go wind's calm. I like that better. Sounds fancier. As the fog breaks, the wind's calm, while a patter of light rain falls. I'm kind of here because I don't want to make it go onto another line. That's a me thing. But light rain does also mean that there is light obscurement, which means that there are disadvantage on perception checks, light-based perception checks. So important note for me, and then I'll make sure to share that with the group. It's hey, by the way, you guys don't have great visuals on stuff because of the rain that's coming down. The current stamina, that's our next area down here. This is a thing that I do because we're doing more of a hex crawly campaign. The way that I break this up, instead of doing hex crawling where you just take into consideration time or as to how people travel around and how much time things take, I instead use this stamina. Essentially, every time that they decide to do something, that takes I roll a d4. If they roll low, hopefully, then that becomes the DC. Once this DC passes what is ever their normal, basically passive Constitution saving throw, they need to start making active saving throws to be you're doing a lot of stuff during the day, it's getting late. It gives us an idea about how much time stuff takes, as well as sort of how much energy people have in a day, which is really what this measures. So I like to measure the energy that people expend during the day rather than hours, specifically hours. Anytime they want to do things, they roll a d4. If they roll low, then we just keep bumping it up. And it starts out just like that. So currently, they've gone around, they've done a few things. So it's current stamina is 10, that's the DC. Nobody's con save is a 10. Everybody has, I think, at least, 12s and 14s. Are pretty much everybody. I think. Yes. So Ash, Caleb, and Zarnok have 14. So everybody who's there is going to have a 14. This is actually helpful for me. I need to add this back in. We have Ash, Caleb. Then on a 12, we have Wait, who's not going to be there. So it's not as much. Doesn't matter as much for them. That just kind of gives you an idea of like, oh, by the way, as you guys are going through here, your guys are starting to get to the point where you've done enough stuff during the day that you're going to start to get tired. Now, one of the things I didn't say is that if they fail the stamina DC, so once for these guys in this session, it'll be 14. Once they get a 15, once the DC becomes 15 or higher, they have to make an active save against it. If they fail the active save, they immediately take a point of exhaustion, a level of exhaustion. And we're using the 2014 exhaustion rules, not the terrible 2024 ones where we just add a -1 to everything, because that's boring and not useful, and is completely adverse to the design of 5e. One of our wonderful 2024 revisions that are just, oof, man. Some of them are real rough. Some of them are good. A lot of them are real rough. So, yeah, so we're using the 2014 rules, so that means that they get disadvantage on their ability checks, then they get half speed. No, not half speed. Disadvantage on attacks and saves, then half speed. So the idea is like you guys can continue to push yourself to go further and further. As you do, it becomes harder to meet that DC because the save's going to keep going up. The DC is going to keep going up. You'll start getting disadvantage on the saves as you try to just push through it. So there are some very specific circumstances in which you might want to push it, as in, we know that the village is kind of like just over the next hill crest. We're like, we're going to push it so that way we can get there, we can be in the village, and we don't have to camp here a few miles away. Things like that. So that's the sort of things. It kind of gives them decision making as to where they want to go and what they want to do, and gives them an idea of how much energy they have for the day. And so it gives them a built-in idea of how to think about when they should go to take a rest. Injuries. Currently, nobody has injuries. I probably should have made Swain roll for one because Swain got KO'd in the Carrion Crawler fight, but I forgot, so I didn't do that. So injuries, we do also a lingering injuries thing in this campaign. This is to avoid some of the pop-up, pop-down meta play that kind of goes around. Just, we don't heal anybody until they hit 0 hit points. Now it goes, oh, if you get knocked unconscious during a combat or anytime, if you get knocked unconscious, you have to roll. I have a D12 body hit die, and it's like you're going to have some sort of lingering injury. We've had people who have broken legs. We've got people who have screwed up their arms. Kind of give them injuries as to people who've gotten their bell rung, stuff like that. Just to give them this thing is like, you really, really do not want to go down to 0, because then you're going to have something else going on, which is going to linger for a while, and then it uses a resource die mechanic for them to build out of it. And you definitely don't want to get re-injured in the same area, because then things get a lot worse. Because this game is a little bit more brutal. Is not really the right word. It's more like, I'd say grounded, a little bit more grounded, as to like, hey, when sometimes bad things happens to you if you guys try to do crazy stuff. And then we have our rations. Right now everybody's sitting in a D4 except D6. We use a resource die mechanic for them to track that. Like I said, there's a lot of hex crawling, overworldy kind of stuff that's going on in this campaign. So we keep track of how many rations they have, because it's important when you're out there, is they have definitely gotten lost in the jungle. That nobody's really run out of rations yet, but it could happen. And there are other ways that they can forage and stuff like that to bolster their rations. Gives them advantage on things like the resource die mechanic. If you're not familiar with the resource die mechanic, you can go check it out. I definitely have streams about it over on the main channel, Red Ragged Fiend, on YouTube. You can go check that out. But essentially, it starts generally with a d6. Every time that you would use that, for instance, taking a long rest, you roll a d6. If you roll a 2 through 6, nothing happens. If you roll a 1, then your die size goes down to a d4. If you roll a 1 on a 1d4, that means you have one instance of that resource left. In this case, rations would be like you have a day of rations left, at which point you will be out of food. And then there are other ways, like you can, PCs can split rations with people. So if you have a, say for instance, Swain has a d6, they could take some of their rations, and let's say that Zarnok went down to 1. Swain could be like, I'm gonna share my rations with Zarnok, and so his d6 would go down to a d4, and Zarnok's 1 would go up to a 1. So there are other ways that they can do that. Also, if they have beasts of burden, if they have mules or horses or carts or boats or things like that, that allows them to carry more supplies. And we use a similar thing for like ammunition. That's all sort of like the point of order. That's like the sort of like just stuff we kind of go through every session, make sure that things are keeping the campaign kind of like in line and running. That's it. After that, we get into sort of the actual good fiddly bits of doing prep. So in this one, I said we're going to be continuing Wise Halamus Mountain. That's an exploration adventure that I have. It's right here that I have printed out. This is, so we've gone over this before in the other channel, but like, look, this is, so if we take out this page, the front page is just one of these. It's the last session. We just remove this page. We have what's left with is this guy, these guys right here. So we have a little map, just a little node map, and then it's one. Essentially, this adventure is one page front and back, and then stat blocks for everybody. And that's it. And this was going to be session 4 of this adventure, so you don't actually have to make really large adventures. This adventure is really small. There's only a few like scenes or locations within this location encounters, but it's not always like a combat encounter. There's there's just 7 in here, but it takes time. There's lots of things for them to interact with. There's people to talk to. There's things to check out and investigate. There's monsters to fight. There's trying to figure out what's going on this mountain. Kind of a big part of at least my adventure. It's a lot of like, if you're paying attention, if you're looking at stuff, you'll get clues about other stuff that's going on. I try to do a lot of telegraphing. But yeah, it's very simple. I talked about it. This is built with that, we have to call that basically hex design. Kind of what I've landed on, hex design for adventure building or for dungeons, where you just kind of make few different nodes and then connect them how they connect, and then check for things. And it doesn't have to be, it's really simple way to build adventures. It's a little bit more robust than something like a 5-room dungeon. It also isn't sort of like a mega dungeon, but at least in my case, generally suffices between, kind of depends on the group, but kind of between 2 to 3 sessions, depending on how fast they go and what kind of group they are. In this case, our group that I run for on Fridays is a little bit slower. They take a little bit longer. We also, our time is usually truncated. Usually somebody's late, honestly. So usually doesn't go. We usually get about 3 to 3.5 hours of a good session per session. So, this little adventure's been, 10 hours adventure. Probably going to be closer to about 12 hours. So not bad. Certainly less than it probably took me to prep most of it. Prepping adventures like this is actually pretty simple. It really just kind of comes down to the formatting. That tends to be the stuff that takes time, or me printing out or typing out the stat blocks. Of how I run. I like to run paper only. I try not to use the computer very much. I like having the screen in my face when I'm running. But yeah. So we're going to continue the adventure, but we do have some things. I've already noted some things here. So we have the wandering monster check on the path. So they are on the path. They are following a gigantic cave bear that the druid has decided to speak with animals, and this this cave bear has enlisted their help it conscripted them into helping him catch a trickster. Now, they don't really know who the trickster is yet. Also, I guess this is a spoiler warning for anybody who's in my group who happens to be watching this. You should stop watching this, because we're going to start talking about stuff now. So if you don't want to be spoiled, which you shouldn't want to be, you should kick out. We'll come back and we'll talk about some other stuff that won't be as important for you, but for right now, as we're doing this actual session prep action, you need to probably take a hike. Scrub the video and come back later. Alright. Now that they're gone, let's talk about the adventure itself in the prep. So we have a wandering monster check on the way. So they're moving between the high camp and the Ursa Major Cave. Along that path, there is a node for a wandering monster. I'm just gonna roll that real quick. Let's pull this up. But I can just do it right here. Just use some Google Dice. Okay, so a random encounter only has wandering monster encounter only happens on a 1. I didn't roll a 1. So wandering monster. And they're gonna arrive at area 03 with the cave bear. At this point, I am going to put in a little note here because Ash's Speak with Animals spell will wear off while they're moving. That's going to wear off because I think Speak with Animal it's not a very long spell. At an hour? I don't even know if it's an hour. It's in fact 10 minutes, so it's for sure gone. And I think we might be getting to the point where Ash probably doesn't have a ton of spells left for the day. I think they've already used maybe one other spell, so I think they might be down to maybe one more spell. They might not have any spells. Which is going to make this really weird because they can't speak with the bear now, even though they've been speaking with the bear. Right. Let's see. So let me read what's actually going on. All right. Ursa Major Cave, DC 11. I mean, I guess I could pull up the digital one, but we probably don't need to look at it very much. Ursa Major Cave, DC 11. I use the ICRPG room DCs. I like them a lot. Or it's just kind of you set a DC for a location and be like, most things are about this DC. There is a rock causeway that crosses a chasm 30 feet to the cave entrance. Got that. It doesn't look like there's anything there. I put that there because there's a chance that they might have an encounter with this cave bear. That might have been a combat encounter, but they've decided to talk to it. And for right now, it is not attacking them. Let's put it that way. But that could change. I wanted to give them a way where they could a choke point, whether they might be on the right or wrong end of that choke point. The entrance has a crude symbol carved into the rock face. I'm just going to go ahead and... Did I go ahead and write that? No, I don't think I need to write that down. So they could do a nature check to figure out what these crude symbols mean. But we also have a druid in the party who speaks druidic, which is the language. So they will have recognized that. And it basically says, beware, Ursa. It's like, hey, there's big bear here. So watch out. Silly, because they already know that's there. But if they put some effort into it, they probably realize that is probably Halamith who has written that, or somebody wrote that for Halamith. As far as we know, Halamith is not a druid. But there is a druid in the area. They decided to talk to Halamith instead. For the quest. So anyways, this is part of a larger adventure. The adventure is that they are trying to figure out this affliction that is making these Vegemen sick in their homeland. They seem to have some sort of like fungus thing growing off of them. The Vegemen in this context are Vegepygmies. We're just calling them different names in the campaign. I'm trying to do that with most of the creatures. They feel a little different. So they've also fought a bunch of fire newts, and the fire newts we're calling Salaman, like salamanders, but Salaman. Kind of gives a little bit. I like it. It gives a little bit more of that kind of old school. But let's see. So then, two massive goats stand on the sheer rock around the entrance. They've already encountered some ghosts before, so that won't be anything new. They look upon the party with disinterest. NPCs can shuffle along a narrow ledge along the entrance cliff face if the land bridge is blocked by, say, a cave bear. Now, the cave bear won't be blocking it this time. But should something show up while they're there, there's a way for them to get around. Within is Noof. Noof is Halimith's raccoon, because they're a raccoon, they're nocturnal. So it's during the day, so they're probably asleep. I'm assuming they will be asleep. Halimith's raccoon with a silver hoop earring, so that way they can tell that, hey, this is something else. Take a look at that. I lost my place. They're napping inside, which is probably what we're going to do. I'll give them a little check, which I'll probably write down. Probably write that. I guess, first of all, let's roll. I'm just going to roll. Is Noof in there? Almost assuredly, yes. Yeah, okay, so Noof's in there. Is Noof asleep? Probably. +3. Yeah, Noof is full asleep. So our raccoon is on his back. Very pausing there. Deep in dreamland. And they arrive. Deep in dreamland. Surrounded by shells. I say by nutshells. Ripped sack. Just gotta give it. So it looks like he's gotten here and he's splurged on himself. And he has fallen asleep in all his revelry. Alright. While inside the cave, roll for a random encounter. Okay. High likelihood it will be the returning cave bear. It doesn't really matter because the cave bear's gonna be with them. So there's probably gonna be some sort of encounter that happens here. Now, it's gonna depend on whether Ash has the ability to speak with animals again. So I think this is one of the things. Is the trickster at the location? Yeah, Noof is the trickster. Noof is for sure at the location. Noof and the Bear King. Cannot speak. This is going to be something that we're going to introduce. So, speak with animals gives you the ability to talk to any animals. But animals intrinsically can't talk to each other, especially members of different species. So, Noof, who's a raccoon, cannot speak with the Bear King, who is, like a Kodiak bear, like a big bear. They can't talk to each other. So if Ash has one more speak with animals, they will have the ability to have some sort of dialogue here. If they don't, this is probably going to be some sort of weird combat that's going to break out, because the Bear King, once they spot Noof, is going to immediately going to try to grab Noof and probably kill Noof. Which Kodiak bear versus raccoon, probably not going to go well in combat. Now, the party can also try to grab Noof, but Noof's a pretty slippery guy. Do I actually have stats for I don't necessarily need. I do not, which makes sense. That's sort of the idea. Is like, hey, if you stat something, that means it can die. Noof isn't staffed. Nope, there he is. Sorry, he's under Noof. He's not under Ray. He has an AC of 13. He has 9 hit points, so not too bad in the hit point. But he does have a climb speed, which is helpful. Does the bear have a climb? Bear does not have a climb speed. So if he can scramble up the walls and jump his way around. That'll work. The goats may or may not get involved. Probably not. The goats are kind of, as we've established already in the adventure, kind of butt heads. Put it kindly, they're butt heads, real dicks. So they're probably not going to intercede or help anybody. Ash could speak with them. Probably unlikely, but they will be able to tell them something more. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, because we're doing a little thing, and I know this is going to be the first scene, so that's one of the key things when you're being a dungeon master and you're prepping for a session. You really only get to control the first scene. After that, the players make choices, and then things go awry. But you really get the ability to really focus in on what you want that first scene to be. So I'm going to roll, see if we're going to have another wandering monster. Okay, so no wandering monster is going to show up while they're in there. Now, once they start backtracking, they'll have to make more wandering monster checks. They've rocked through most of the random encounters. There are some random encounters which aren't going to double up. The carrion crawler's dead, so they can't do that. And the griffin's still technically alive, so the griffin could come back. But the griffin's pretty hurt, so probably won't. But that one still is on the table. Thogwin they've dealt with. Team methods they've dealt with. Creature that jumps through time and space they have not dealt with. It's the phase spider. Though they have been telegraphed that the phase spider is around because they have been through a place where there was a whole bunch of webbing. And very large creatures that are wrapped up in it. And they've seen the goats, they haven't really fought the goats. The goats aren't real fighters. The bear is something that they could, if they try to help Noof, is the thing. If they decide to help Noof, especially knowing that Noof, if they speak with Noof, Noof is Halameth's sort of companion. He's awakened. And can speak. So Noof can speak to them. So if Noof starts speaking to them and they decide to side with Noof, because Noof can probably give them some information as to, where Halameth is and what happened to him. They're going to want to keep Noof alive, which is going to upset the cave bear. So there's likely this will turn into some sort of combat, which is good for me as a DM, because they're coming out the chute pretty hot. They haven't really had much of a combat since their last rest. So if I could smack them around with the cave bear a little bit, that would be helpful. Now the cave bear can do a little bit of damage to him. It has quite a few hit points, but not hard to hit. And they can try to run, but the cave bear does move faster than them. It'll be an issue. But there's, like I said, there's the ledge. They can always push the king of the bears off, Bear King, off the ledge, and he can tumble down the mountain. There's lots of options. They can use their last speak with animal to do something or whatever. There's a lot of different things they could do. So there's a lot of options. So I know that this scene's going to happen, but I don't know and bold some our proper nouns. Perfect. That's the thing, is that we don't know. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with it. Will there be a combat? Probably, but they might find a way to get around it. It's really going to depend on whether Ash has another slot for Speak with Animals, if they want to use it for that. Now, I'd love for them to use it for that and then them go into a big fight. Because likely the next fight after this will be one of the bigger fights. Whatever's going to happen to him next is probably going to be bad. Because they're probably going to find Halamith. Okay. Let's, speaking of. So, upon exiting cave, hear a man's pain scream echo across the mountain, causing birds to take flight. Yeah. I decided that I do like this. We'll say that you can recognize as perfect. So, like I said, they've gone to, now that they've done this location. Now that they've gone to this specific location, the Ursa Major Cave, they'll have hit everything except the actual place where Halamith is. They somehow went all the way around it. It's okay. Happens sometimes. They'll need to work their way back. Noof will probably be able to tell them. And there's yeah, let's give a question. What does Noof know? Does Noof know quite a bit? Yeah, okay. Okay, so Noof recognizes as Halamith. Okay. So now if the party speaks Noof can learn. What are some things? So let's say who, what, when, where, why, how. Okay. Some basic things about what happened to Halamith. So they can speak to Noof because Noof can speak common because it's a awakened animal. Who is the two are attacked by orange and black lizard men on fake lizards on fiery seeds. Let's say fiery seeds. We'll just say lizardmen. That's fine. They'll be able to tell that those are Saladin from the interaction. Noof doesn't know what they are. That gives us our who. When is probably not that important. They've been on the mountain for 2 days, right? I believe that's correct. So how many additional days have... Okay. So about 5 days ago. We'll say 4 to 5 days. Maybe 4, because I feel like if we go too long, then Halamith's going to be really banged up, and I don't want to be that banged up. We'll say go. Take by orange and blue. All right. Where and we know how they were attacked. I'm gonna say Halamith made a run for the panic room. For his, I don't know, I was calling it the panic room in the prep. Intro prep. For Crag. Which is funny. I wrote this before I even started watching the 5th season of Stranger Things, but this is essentially the 5th season of Stranger Things, is that he has a safe place that they could run into, like a crack in the mountain they can make his way into. There's just not a big opening side of it. Now they need to run for the crack for safety. And has been so he ran, so I don't think that he necessarily knows why. Did they say? Sometimes it's just helpful to ask an oracle. So oracle roll, anything like this, I do with a d20. If I roll 11 or plus, the answer is usually yes. If I roll 10 or less, no. Then I add some sort of modifiers onto it. So if I think it's likely or unlikely, it's plus or minus 3. If I think it's very likely or very unlikely, plus or minus 5. Things either. I think it's unlikely. I don't think it's very unlikely, but I think it's unlikely they said anything about why they needed them. Okay, so no. They didn't say anything, they just kind of attacked. For the crag, and I'm just going to put it on here, Panic Room. I'll go ahead and write the thing for it. It's 07. Area 07. Panic Room. Helmuth as well. And I guess we can make this, we can all technically make this one. Because they're going to ask, presumably they're going to ask Noof, like, hey, where's Halamith? And you're confirms friend of Hallam. Him. There we go. There, perfect, fine. Yeah, I think that works. Presumably after that, they will just head on back. Now, the way that this works, how I usually run dungeons or adventures like this, which is basically a dungeon, even open air on the mountainside, is that as they're making their way back from one area, they're retreading old places. Any time that they're backtracking at any point in the adventures that I'm running, I start running wandering monsters, rolling for random encounters with them. Like, if you guys, way I fixate on is, like, if you're not making forward progress, in this case they are, but they're also going over places that there really shouldn't be any trouble unless that trouble isn't new. So basically we're seeing if anybody else has shown up in that time period. Because we still have, there's still, like, danger in the area. There's still, the Griffin can show back up. The Hogwin, there probably won't be any more of that. Carrion Crawler's dead. Probably won't be any more steam methods. Maybe, but probably not. The creature who jumps through time and space is still out there. Who I'm thinking may attack once they get inside the Panic Room. I'm thinking. In fact, I might go ahead and prep the Panic Room. Because there's some special stuff that I've thought about as the adventure's gone on that I want to happen potentially in the Panic Room. Just to kind of make it a little bit more... a more thoughtful encounter than it would otherwise be. They can always come across more Salamans and more Riders. They can also come across giant goats. There are plenty of those that are up and down the mountain. Yeah. So yeah, I think this is pretty much done. The only last thing that I want to do as far as prep work is that I think that I will put down prep because that's probably where they're going to go to next. Because it's really the only place that's left. So it will really depend on how much they get banged up during this encounter, if at all. How they're feeling about their resources, if they rest for another night. If they rest for another night, I might have to check to see if something happens to Halamith. That means that they're kind of delaying, which means it's him in a bad position because the guy is captured by the Salaman. And go. Okay, so here's the panic room. The panic room is a tight crawl space into the mountain cavern, slopes down sharply with platforms along the side. Okay, I already did that. Walls are peppered with petroglyphs. They're ancient. The slope is difficult terrain. Dex save to descend, athletics to ascend. So if you're going down, you need a dex save. It could make it acrobatics. Acrobatics might make more sense. If I'm going to use a skill for one, I should use a skill for it. I'm going to make that change. Six. Acrobatics to descend, athletics to ascend. If they fail, they fall prone and they slide 1d4 squares, or 5 feet times 1d4. And they take 1 point of damage per square that they slide down. There's a bunch of like scree and gravel and stuff like that, and broken rocks. Not worn down, they're quite sharp. Halamith is held on the platform. Oh man, now my... Okay. Well. Come on. Come on. Come on. So I'm just gonna take these and put them to the side. I got some other things. If I can fix the end quick. So you guys hold on if I can fix the end quick.